Hello and welcome to this new Patreon episode. Within this episode, I'm going to talk about horse sacrifice and sacred kingship. Now, when it comes to horse sacrifice, throughout human history, rituals involving the sacrifice of horses have held profound significance in various cultures, serving as a bridge between the earthly realm and the divine. Within this video, I will go into the Celtic and Norse practice first before diving deeper into the Vedic tradition and the light it can shed on the cosmology of the Proto-Indo-European people when it comes to this ritual. And within the Proto-Indo-European belief system, horses were revered for their strength, nobility, and spiritual symbolism, and were chosen as sacrificial offerings to transfer their vitality and essence to the newly crowned king. The act of sacrifice was believed to ensure the king's prosperity and the fertility of the land under his rule. Furthermore, the ritual emphasized the interconnectedness between the king, the land, and the prosperity of the kingdom. Horse sacrifice was also a significant ceremony observed in some Celtic societies as well, particularly among the Gauls and Celts of ancient Britain and Ireland. The ritual was often linked to the inauguration or consecration of a king. The ritual involved the sacrifice of a horse and sometimes other animals, symbolizing the king's connection to the divine, the land, and the people. Horses were highly revered in Celtic culture, symbolizing strength and a link between the earthly and spiritual realms. And the sacred nature of the ceremony was believed to ensure the king's connection to the divine forces and the prosperity of the land under his rule. And the horse, often chosen for its symbolic qualities, was considered a sacred and powerful animal, and its sacrifice was a means of transferring its strength, vitality, and spiritual essence to the newly crowned king. And this horse sacrifice was seen as a symbolic act to secure the well-being of the community and ensure a bountiful harvest. Similar horse sacrifice rituals have been observed in other Indo-European cultures as well, suggesting a shared symbolic significance attached to horses and kingship, which also can be connected to Proto-Indo-European horse sacrifice as well. Now, when it came to kingship within the Celtic tradition, the king was expected to embody physical perfection, symbolizing his role as a guardian of cosmic order and ensuring harmony between the natural universe and its people. Additionally, the king had a special relationship with the forces of the other world, which determined the fate of mortals. However, it is through his marriage to a woman who personified the sovereignty of his kingdom that the king attained true legitimacy. Medieval Irish rituals of inaugurating a new king also echo this, as it sometimes took the form of a wedding feast of kingship. And they imagined the king symbolically marrying his dominion. Similar rituals were also known by the term vice and might have involved both sexual activity and horses. These vaisana were connected to the recounting of exploits in combat by warriors, ancestors, and the retelling of legends and stories. And this sacred union between the king and the woman, representing the sovereignty goddess, often also connected to wild animals or horses, is regarded as the central myth of Celtic tradition. Without a queen, a king was not considered a rightful ruler in Celtic society. And the king's marriage to a woman embodying the sovereignty of the land signifies then also the establishment of a harmonious balance between the masculine and feminine, the sky and the earth, within Celtic tradition, and thus reflects the natural order of the world. And this sacred union symbolizes the union of opposites and the integration of complementary forces, where the sacred marriage often represents the creative and generative aspects of the universe. And it is believed to ensure the fertility of the land, the abundance of crops, and the continuation of life. And in many ancient agricultural societies, the Hieros Gamos was associated with ensuring a successful harvest. And the divine couple is then also a common archetype found in many mythologies, representing the union of complementary opposites and the creation of new life. And this archetype can be also viewed through a Jungian lens as well. When we view it through such a lens, we can see it as the integration of the anima, the feminine aspect of the male psyche, and the animus, the masculine aspect of the female psyche, which represents a balance between the conscious and unconscious aspects of the psyche, and the integration of the masculine and feminine principles. And this sacred marriage can be seen as bringing together these complementary archetypes to bring harmony and balance to the individual psyche and the world. Now, when we bring it to the realm of Norse traditions, we can also see evidence of horse sacrifice as well. The traditions of sacrifice in the late Iron Age are well documented in written and comparative material preserved in Icelandic manuscripts from the early Middle Ages, the Edda, the Skaldic verses, the early medieval laws, and the sagas. These written sources contain information that can be compared with archaeological findings as well, where evidence of horse sacrifices in archaeological contexts from the late Iron Age are everywhere, and the interpretations are often related to the information provided in written sources. The oldest written account of the sacred importance of horses among the Germanic tribes can, like many others, be found in Tacitus's Germania from 98 AD. He describes how white horses are kept in special sacred groves for ritual purposes, including divination. When it comes to the archaeological findings, we can find horses, especially in high-status burials from the Vandal and Viking times. The boat burials at Valsgarde and Vendel in Uppland, and the well-known Norwegian ship graves such as Bor, Gokstad, and Oseberg are classic examples. But evidences of horses are not limited to these contexts, as deposits not only consist of ordinary butcher's waste containing horse bones, but also finds in high-status contexts from settlements and cemeteries as well. And although the number of finds is limited, the horse is one of the relatively few animal species, along with dogs and to some extent cattle, which were given their own burials and graves during the Iron Age in southern Scandinavia. In other words, within the Norse culture, the horse was treated as if a human. And there are also several examples of such horse burials as well. One often mentioned Swedish example dated to the migration period, 375 to 550 AD, was found at Ölands Skogsby, Torslunda parish on Öland. A young stallion was buried on its stomach, head facing to the southwest and legs splayed out to the sides. It was located at the edge of a somewhat older cemetery dated to the Roman Iron Age, where another older horse grave was found in Bornholm in Denmark, dating to the Roman Iron Age. and this horse was buried on its side with its head to the northeast, its forelegs raised and its hind legs extended. But such burials were also not only connected to horses, but also special and very prestigious horse equipment was also found in sacrificial finds from the migration period, which have been linked to close contact with Eastern equestrian people during the migration period. Next to this, pits with specially arranged horse bones have been documented in a number of settlements. At Soortemult, researchers found what was interpreted as a sacrificial pit, barely 1 meter in size, with a rich array of sacrificed domestic animals. On top, there was a horse skull, as well as the lower legs of a horse. Next to this, when it comes to rituals connected to horses and horse sacrifice, in the same way as the Irish sacrifice described by Gerald of Wales in the 12th century, the horse sacrifice for the Norse and the ritual meal appear to have been a religious act that forged special bonds between the king and his people. What is historically known about ancient Scandinavian sacrifices, at least at the close of the pre-Christian period, is that they must have primarily involved slaughtering animals and having sacrificial meals. Where in many places the horse race was the main event that attracted most people. The term Skeid seems in some cases to refer particularly to the horse race that took place there. And in ancient times, the midpoint for these ceremonies was without doubt the field itself, where the best of the grain had grown and ripened. And in all probability, it was the custom for people to ride in procession around the field, and in addition holding horse racing and horse fighting and other competitions on the field itself. Now, when it comes to the horse sacrifices, the connection to kingship is clear, from the Celtic sources and the Nordic sources as well. The horse being symbolically linked to the sovereignty goddess. Now, when it comes to kingship, we know the relevance of Manu and Yemu for both the act of creation of the world and also the connection to kingship. For those who do not know who Manu and Yemu are, Manu and Yemu were a duo in Proto-Indo-European mythology connected to the creation myth, where Manu kills Yemu as a foundational part of the origin of the universe. And in that sense, Manu and Yemu represent fundamental aspects of the universe for the Proto-Indo-European people, with Manu as the first priest and ancestor of humankind, and Yemu as the first king and god of the death and the underworld. So we can see why they might be of importance. And the reason why I am bringing this up is as both figures are important to keep in mind within the context of the below Vedic ritual. The cosmological and universal elements of the Ashramedha rite link the horse and its sacrifice to the god Prajapati, the lord of creation, and he is credited with the invention of all sacrifice and believed to be the first to perform the horse sacrifice. Like how Manu is connected to cattle sacrifice as the first priest, Prajapati as an emanation of Brahman within the Vedic tradition is connected to horse sacrifice, where the earthly king connected to this rite was seen as a representation of all the gods, but especially Indra, so the thunder god. In the Brahmanic period, Prajapati was furthermore conceptually fused with the cosmic giant Purusha, whose dismemberment by the gods created the universe. And Hinduism refers to Purusha as the soul of the universe, the universal spirit present everywhere, in everything and everyone, all the time. And during the Vedic period, Purusha was considered the ultimate sacrificial victim, whose sacrifice was the act of creation, which thematically links to Yemu, but also Vedic Yama, who is connected to horses. As Purusha was also, through the Ashramedha rite, connected to the social order as well. Further, a possible connection between Prajapati and Protogonos, meaning firstborn, of the Greek Orphic tradition has been proposed as well, linking him to Phanes, who is seen by the Orphics as equivalent to Zagreus Dionysus, where we also know that within the Dionysian rites, his rituals connected to the sacred bull reenacted the creation of the cosmos and humanity by offering a bull as a sacrificial symbol. And this act was in its mystery seen as a divine dismemberment of the god himself. Similarly, with Prajapati, the sacrificial horse also became an incarnation of himself. And consequently, the horse Prajapati is then also voluntarily sacrificed to himself. However, the focus of the sacrifice, like in the immolation of Purusha, is not on the death of the horse, but on the forces released during the sacrifice, the forces that rejuvenate and renew the cosmic order, and thus also the social order. It could then be that the bull, as much as the horse, played an important part within the cosmological order of the Proto-Indo-European people, both linked to the creation of the world. However, the horse itself seems to be especially linked to kingship, where the bull seems to be a more general act of sacrifice, echoing the original sacrifice made by Manu and connected to a more priestly function. What we can, however, also see with Prajapati being both connected to Brahman as much to Purusha, the latter which thematically links to Yemu. Prajapati and Yemu as a being could indeed symbolically for the Proto-Indo-Europeans symbolize a state of wholeness. Yemu sometimes being seen as a hermaphroditic being, with the horse possibly being a symbol connected to Yemu, as much as being connected to his mother, the sovereignty goddess. But when it now comes to the horse itself, well, it is often connected to transcendence, and this similarly is the case within the Indo-European context. The horse also symbolizes the union of the divine twins and their opposing forces, with the horse as the mediator who unites them in a harmonious balance, symbolizing the union of consciousness and the unconscious. But further, there are also other different mythological representations within cultures that depict this coming together of opposites. One such horse figure is the Norse god Odin's eight-legged horse Sleipnir, who travels between the worlds of the living and the dead, where Sleipnir might have been originally the two horses of the divine twins. Similarly, Pegasus in Greek mythology also represents the union of opposites, a terrestrial and celestial creature associated with poetic inspiration and creativity and transcending earthly limitations. As such, the horse also representing a figure of not only transcendence but also wholeness. In that sense, both Yemu, the horse, and the king, in the ancient pagan Indo-European sense, are symbols connected to wholeness. Only when the king is whole was he fit to rule, and his connection to the sovereignty goddess, the land, and his people were key in this, as thus the horse sacrifice was most likely intimately linked to Yemu and his dismemberment to create the world. Yet, if we would also look at the Dionysian context, at the same time the symbolic death of the bull was also tied to the rebirth of Dionysus, so it very well could be a symbolic act of the king symbolically being reborn through this ritual. But in the end, when it comes to the horse ritual in its connection to kingship, It is not just connected to the rebirth of the king and the retaining of the wholeness lost and the renewing of the sacrifice made by Yemu, but it is also intimately tied to the sovereignty goddess as well, truly then representing the coming together of life and death, light and dark, feminine and masculine, where the feast and horse races that were held next to the horse that was sacrificed also formed a communal bond between the king and his people, which was also deeply connected to agricultural practices and fertility, as thus becoming a central ritual to these ancient people.